one that back in 2020, along with a pandemic, we kind of were faced to take some ownership and to take some personal accountability. And as HR leaders, sometimes that's really hard to navigate when we may not be ourselves experts in that area, which I for sure can say I am in no way, shape, or form an expert. But we found J.E.D.I Collaborative, and we were able to really put some good purpose in place. And I just really love their model. I love that they are tailored to CPG specifically, and they make it very simple for us to kind of just navigate through this in a very authentic way, which I believe is first and foremost the best way to do it. So I am so honored that Cynthia Phillips has decided to walk us through the model of J.E.D.I Collaborative, because I will not do it justice the way that she can. And I just want to introduce you to her. So Cynthia is their VP Operations, Membership and Belonging, and she's just going to walk us through a little informative conversation about what J.E.D.I Collaborative is and how they can support us in our DE&I efforts. If you have any questions, like Rachel said, put them in the chat box at the end. We'll just kind of go through those, and I hope you enjoy. So Cynthia, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to kick it off to you here, and I'm going to put myself on mute. Guys, you're testing my savviness right now, so 1 second. Can you guys see? Beautiful. All right, Cynthia, to you.
Okay, so first off, thumbs up if everyone can hear me. Perfect, thank you so much. So I am so excited. I'm so excited, one, to even be with Ellis right now and be heading up J.E.D.I. They worked on J.E.D.I Collaborative for a year and some change before, obviously, the world. And then kind of settled back, took a look around. By them, I mean the 4 co-founders took a look around and sort of were wondering, what can we do here that will be impactful in a way where folks can easily engage, but not at a easily engage deeply, is what we like to say. So not sort of a surface level, but also no one needs more work right now. And so they were looking around. They thought the best turn that J.E.D.I could do was really to frame what they were doing in an easily operationalizable way. So that's where I came on board. So I am VP of Operations, Membership, and Belonging at OSC. I have a huge systems background. I come from not the bad side of tech. I come from the translation side of tech, where I'm all about what is it doing? Is it helping people? How can we optimize it? All the systems, the human system, the people system, the cultural system, where are these things all intersecting? Where are the places where we can maybe reduce some of the friction and just in general move things forward? And so I took a look at what we had in terms of the programming that we had, and worked with the amazing team that was already there to develop what we're now calling sort of a pathways to action opportunity with our J.E.D.I story. So why is it ever necessary for us to think about justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion? Well, as with most things, there's a pretty sizable gap between who the population is that eats and who the population is that's sort of running everything in terms of big food, natural food. There's just these large corporations, right? And even when we get down to like natural food companies, they're smaller corporations, but they're still predominantly white. Natural food has moved away from its sort of BIPOC origins and is now seen as an elite thing. If you reference someone who is vegan, oftentimes what you come up with is sort of a white face. So we are trying to expand opportunities for folks who are currently systemically, intentionally, and unintentionally excluded from the natural product industry, as well as from the CPG industry. The entrepreneurs out there, they want access. They're building amazing foodways. They are really trying to bring back some of the cultural strength of how and why we eat and what we eat, as well as tie it to a narrative that is much more healthy, which of course then impacts everybody else, impacts the insurance industry, like everything kind of builds on what we eat. So we are trying to change that in a couple of different ways. And we are trying to make sure that in addition to really addressing BIPOC, really any marginalized group, also we're including women in that marginalized group. Interestingly, most of our membership of CEO leaders, we have about 25% of our CEO founders who are and identify as women, which is more than the CPG industry in general. So we got there by some targeted outreach. That's one of the opportunities that we think that most people have is diversifying your outreach. I'm happy to talk about more specific ways that we suggest, but I also want to introduce our slate of programming. So next slide, please. So our vision, what are we trying to do here? We're trying to make a world where food, beverages, supplements, and all natural products are a source of nourishment, health, and wellness for everyone, not just a source of injustice, inaccessibility, and racist disparities in health outcomes. So we are all listening to the news. We've all heard about food deserts. There's another term that is becoming popular. It's called food apartheid, which is slightly different than a food desert, where the food may not, quote unquote, sort of naturally trickle into an area. Food apartheid is on purpose. It is on purpose that communities are being prevented from opening and keeping supermarkets, farmers markets. They're just not getting licenses to open any place where you can actually access good food, healthy food easily. So that's one of the things we're up against changing. Again, we realize it's a big task. It's a never-ending quest. But we feel like we have some opportunities where we can help folks at least keep moving forward. Next, please. So who are we for? So we're about proactive companies, leaders, entrepreneurs, professionals that need to transform the company culture and systems. So I think I'm speaking to a group here where you're not CEOs, maybe you are of your own company, but for the purposes of this particular talk, there are CEOs who are deciding either for moral reasons or for bottom line reasons. It's actually you can make money if you move in a more diverse and inclusive way. But there are CEOs who, for whatever reason, have decided, okay, we need to diversify, we need to be more just, we need to look at some equity and some inclusion. And so then they task folks within the industry, within the organizations, to figure that out. Go do that. Go make us Jedi. And that is such a broad ask that, again, what we try to do is create a pathway or a set of tracks that will enable people to figure out what they can do with their situation, their systems, their culture, and then give them a little nudge to keep on that pathway. A lot of people started things when we were when the murders happened, when folks were very, very, demanding in a way for folks to take a stand, to stay where they stood. Things got started, and what we've seen is now budgets are getting cut. Those commitments maybe haven't been dusted off in a while. So we're all about restarting, re-engaging, re-pushing, helping people get that movement toward commitment and ultimately implementing some J.E.D.I initiatives. Next. So how do we do that? So we use our self-guided commitment platform. Basically, that's a learning management tool that we have set up. We make sure that we have different entry levels. So we have our free resource, our website, J.E.D.I Collaborative.com has an open source tool which walks you through the basics that you need in order to get yourself and your company to a commitment. And that's free. Anyone can access it. It's got a little checklist. It's things like make sure that you have executive buy-in, try and set up an action committee. So that's the first thing we do. The second thing we do is we have a pathway that is called Jumpstart. It uses the free tool, and it kind of lights a little bit of a fire. It's very hard to keep things going by yourself. And so once you've entered into our learning management tool and you're on the Jumpstart pathway, you are building this commitment, but you have a set of people with you. You have a cohort who's doing the same thing, and you're getting prompts from the system. You're getting opportunities to work with people who are kind of in the same place as you. There's just a little extra nudge to try and build some accountability to get you to your commitment. The other thing we have in our learning management tool is it's called our Trailblazer pathway. Once you have that commitment in hand, then you can move into our Trailblazer module. It's very hard to say right now, which is a 9-month program that takes you from, we are committing to do this, we are committing to increase equity on our production floor, and walks you through building out a plan. So the actual implementation plan, and this again is where I get kind of nerdy and happy, the implementation plan is, what does that look like? What are policies? What are procedures? What's our scope on this? What are our metrics? You're building out this entire plan that will ensure success because you've thought through all the details, as well as the high level things like, are we biased in our hiring? How do we make sure that we're not discriminating intentionally when we invite people to a room who we would love to have as part of the conversation, but they're just not coming? What's happening there? So we walk through a set of scenarios designed to create an implementation plan for your commitment. And then by the end of Trailblazer, you have implemented something, and we're all very excited. We have that's our LMS, that's our learning management system, and our pathways. I'll talk about our pathways later too. And then we also have industry influence and resources. So we are a network of CEOs of some very, very, very famous, large, important companies where the CEOs have dedicated a lot of time, a lot of resources to helping some of these things happen. So we talk to them, they talk to us, we have conversations that are J.E.D.I, but also go beyond J.E.D.I, like Dr. Bronner's is one of our CEOs. So they're very, very interested right now in figuring out how to build a learning community in Africa where people can come and learn from people in Eritrea how they farm. So it's less about us coming up with some ideas over here and then taking them over there. It's more about, what are you already doing? Where can we help? And then coming back and building out, okay, what are we then gonna do with that product? So that's an example. Then we have many examples. We have a lot of local examples as well. We have Conda Mason, who is working with Black farmers on the East Coast. They've actually just purchased a farm and are working with the folks who historically have been denied their land. They bought their land back, and they're farming rice that goes into another one of our partners, Lotus Foods, rice packs. So that kind of industry influence and conversation is happening. We're taking note, and we're bringing that to the folks who are in our program. We have guided programs. I talk about those. We also have this connected capital. What we mean by that are entrepreneurs come up and they have a great idea, and for so many reasons, they're finding themselves shut out of the current system. And so we work with people like Slow Money. We have our own set of investors to find opportunities for folks to find money where they couldn't before. And then we have events, and we promote events for entrepreneurs of marginalized backgrounds. Most recent event is Food Funded. It's coming up May 25th, and it is going to be this fantastic opportunity for folks who are mostly in the Bay Area, but also kind of scattered around the country, to tell us what they do and to hopefully find and talk to some interested investors and people who can give them advice, but also give them hopefully some money to expand into the next version of their business. Very exciting. Folks are going to be there. It's going to be in the Presidio in San Francisco. If folks haven't already got plans and are going to be up here, I know you're in San Diego, but if you're going to be up here, then it's a fantastic event. We had 200 applicants this year, which is amazing on the one hand, and also kind of indicative on the other hand, because there are a lot of people right now who are looking opportunities to grow their business that extra bit. So we are for everybody. We're community for companies, executives, entrepreneurs, leaders, directors, managers, anyone really in charge of effective change. Next slide. We have a proven track record. So One Step Closer is the parent company. And what we like to say is that we're a vessel. And so we do two things. We create ripples. We see these ideas and then sort of let them ripple out. And then the other thing we do is we have these action summits where we bring CEOs together who have an idea and then sort of enable that idea to grow. So that's how we got our packaging collaborative, which has over 600 members. It's a collection of folks who came together around sustainable packaging. We also have a climate collaborative, which packaging collaborative happened. A couple CEOs got together to launch that. Then we have our climate collaborative, which just recently spun off into its own beautiful new world. And that is an opportunity for folks to really focus on how to make commitments and act and impact climate-related opportunities. And the newest baby is the J.E.D.I Collaborative. So we're a couple of years old, and we, again, 4 CEOs came together, really realized that we needed to, like draw a line in the sand, and that's where J.E.D.I came from. So all of these opportunities bubble out of one sector, which is our overarching CEO member network. Next slide. So Martin Ellis is one of our Gunrunner is one of our CEO folks. He went through the action learning cohort. We have his. I think you're gonna get these slides afterwards, but Gun is interesting because he very firmly believes that diversity and inclusion and equity should be the center of every policy conversation. He's also working for Martin Ellis, which is a family-owned company and has been for years. And so time and again, we have had conversations where they are both tasking Gun with increasing revenue, with outreach, with making sure that the product stays sustainable and relevant to new audiences, and saying, but don't set a J.E.D.I. So he's walking a very fine line, because everything that I just described can be accomplished with J.E.D.I. And so he finds himself often having to kind of tone down the J.E.D.I part, while still realizing that it's actually a pretty important fit in everything else he's been tasked to do. So he went through our CEO Action Learning initiative, which is the 4th initiative in our pathways that I'll talk about in a second. And he came away with some ideas around how to try and move the family leadership toward at least having a conversation about why this is important. We gave him a lot of numbers about how successful he could be, or the organization could be, just because more and more data is coming out right now talking about diverse teams, diverse thought, diverse actions lead to this kind of bottom line growth that he was interested in, if the organization's interested in. So he's one of our cheerleaders. We love them. Next. And then there's Michelle. So Nana Joe's, she also was part of our CEO Action Learning cohort. And she also went through one of our initiatives. She is our star in terms of product collaborations. She makes granola, obviously, and one would think that when you have a CEO group, you don't want overlapping products, because maybe there's competition or something along those lines. So Michelle not only does not believe that, she actively reaches out to her fellow compatriot CEOs and makes these amazing blends. And so she's worked with Lisa Curtis from Kuli, who makes a product that involves the moringa fruit, which is just a super fruit. They made this amazing blended granola for Mother's Day. She's had another couple of collaborations where she teamed up with folks who make yogurt with Miyokos to make a yogurt and granola bowl. And that was to support, I think, women's breast health. But Michelle's all about the partnerships, and she's all about reaching out. And she's so small. Her company's so small, but they're making a lot of money, and they're really finding new ways to work with folks to push the message and the mission. Next, please. So here are our programs. So we have our pathways. The CEO Action Initiative is where CEOs come together, have conversations at a higher level about what they can do to support J.E.D.I. Trailblazer is once you have a commitment, you go into Trailblazer. This is not for CEOs. This is for folks who are actually implementing and designing programs for their organizations. And it is the step up from Jumpstart, which is where you actually figure out what your commitment is in the first place. And then, of course, we have the free self-guided pathway that's available on our website. I already talked a bit about the connecting and championing impact makers. We also, in addition to our action summits, we have our storytelling series, which this time around is going to focus on our women CEOs and just the amazing things they're doing, and focus on their journeys. And then we also have some internship opportunities with HBCUs. We've signed a couple of memorandums of agreement to not just build yet another internship program, but offer a kind of certification that ensures that the companies that the interns are going into are ready to support them in finding success. So we're kind of looking at that from a different view. We are everywhere. We have a partnership with the natural products with Expo West and Expo East, and one of the top executives at I think it's, I'm completely blanking on the name of it, but one of the top executives was one of the co-founders of J.E.D.I, and so she's really useful and helpful and fantastic in getting us in front of folks at Expo West and Expo East. And then we have other events like this where we talk about what we're doing. Then on the other side, we have a couple of supports. So we have what we're calling OSC University. This is not necessarily J.E.D.I. It's more focused on just industry practices and CPG practices. And so how are you dealing with kind of the shipping? How are you finding a colo? How are you doing things that, you know, when you can't get the glass jars, sort of other things to think through? What is your, you know, what does your P&L look like? So we have these classes that we're offering, and those are going to be starting up in July, one a month. And they don't go in order, they're just in general. And so folks can sign up, and it's sort of a drop-in opportunity to learn about something you're interested in. Also on our website, our J.E.D.I Collaborative website, and those also show up on the OSC, OSC.org website, OSC2.org website. This is more about pathways. I'm not going to read through this slide because I think I've talked about pathways an awful lot, but I'm happy to engage with really anyone who wants to talk about more of these in detail. I will say the Jumpstart pathway is 4 months. It's 1 meeting a month. And the Trailblazer pathway is 9 months. Again, 1 meeting a month. And then you're expected to kind of do some homework because you're obviously building out your plan. Next. So Lindsay Bolton from All Good, she came to 2 of our Jumpstart as well as our Trailblazers pathway. And her job was to make All Good center diversity. It's a very small company, and they were having a lot of trouble trying to figure out how they even do that, right? So they have like 2 execs who are also the founders. They had Lindsay, and then they had the team that was working on the floor. So in terms of centering diversity, they weren't even sure where to start. And so what we did there is we helped frame out what diversity can look like in a scalable way. And she ended up making a 2-year plan to sort of, as they increased hiring, what does their hiring look like? And so they developed a non-biased hiring process. Next. And then of course we have Chef Chu. I don't know how many of you know Chef Chu from Something Better Foods, but he is just a superstar. He's in the Bay Area. He started off as an individual who did catering, and then decided that they were actually going to switch from doing catering to creating their own version of plant-based meat. And in all of that, he decided to also center the fact that he was going to keep his company regardless of what various buyers wanted to offer him. He always wanted to hold a controlling stake, because fundamentally his venture is about returning that kind of historical wealth and historical legacy to his community, to his family. He is just really doing amazing right now. With COVID, they just opened up their own plant-based meat creation shop, and are working with a couple of local vegan restaurants in Oakland to supply their meat. Next. And then Funlayo. Funlayo is on the East Coast. She's one of our very few folks who is not, who doesn't make food. She actually makes healthcare and beauty care and beauty products. Also amazing is an African immigrant, and specific to her, she came over with the idea, and actually some confusion. She doesn't understand why leading from the heart is sort of seen as non-business. So everything she does, she really leads with that idea. She's a great business person. She is growing her business. I think they're at 2 million now. Excuse me, she's getting into more stores. She came to us because she really needed to work with the other Rising Star members to figure out how to get on shelves. Because again, it sort of says it here, but people would look at her and say, well, we already have a black founder. We already have black, products. And she would say, but they're not the same products. And oftentimes they were food. So there is this constant push from the CPG world that is just dismissive. And so it may not be actively racist, but it is actively marginalizing, actively dismissive. And it's an upward climb. She's continuing to speak out, but one of the reasons that she really likes being a Rising Star member, one of our CEO chapters, is because she can find other folks like her who she can talk to and maybe, get around some of these hurdles. So again, a big slide with a lot of words. Our value proposition, we really want to make sure that folks who are currently excluded become more included. We do that in a variety of ways. How do we track that? So what we do is we make sure that we are really looking at the numbers. We work with a lot of data folks, and so Nielsen IQ. We have some partnerships where we have very specific SKUs we're looking at. How many women are on boards? How many diverse entrepreneurs and founders have companies that are sustained over a number of years, and how many folks within companies come from a non-majority background. We have graduated 50 companies so far from our J.E.D.I Collaborative Pathways leadership programs, and every year we convene these events, sort of annual events. We bring people together to talk about how we're doing. Next. These are our partners. We love our partners. They make it so that we can continue doing what we're doing without worrying constantly about how we're going to cover our costs. So our programs do cost money, but the money they cost doesn't quite cover everything. And so we have these fantastic programs that help us sort of make up the difference. This is our team. That's me over there. I have Grace and Jasmine, who came to me as part of the team, and I couldn't be more lucky. They're brilliant and fantastic and have been with OSC for years. Laura Dickinson was one of the co-founders of J.E.D.I. She, Carlotta Mast, and Cheryl O'Loughlin were the brain trust behind J.E.D.I, and then they brought on Marianne Howland to really flesh out that idea. And then we have our fundraisers. We have Dare Peopleton and Nessa Child. They have full-time jobs someplace else, but they also help us out with our fundraising. And next. And so I already mentioned Carlotta Mast and Marianne and Cheryl. So to that group, we've also added Jose Corona, who is now with Steph Curry's Eat, Learn, Play Foundation. That's our board committee. They're the folks who we run all of our big ideas by. How can you help to ensure an equitable regenerative food system for generations to come? So you can sponsor us at the J.E.D.I Collaborative. For sure, enroll in our programs. We are just launching another set. So if you go to JEDIcollaborative.com, you can find a big blue button that allows you to apply. One of our programs is application-based. It's our Trailblazer program. We want to make sure that you're ready with a commitment before you come in there, because we, again, want to make sure that you're succeeding. And then you can connect us to your connections. Spread the word. Like, tell people about us. Visit us. Next. I think that's the last one.
Awesome. Thank you, Cynthia. That's amazing. I think at least for us at Perfect Snacks, that was like bare minimum, but a really great tool for us to understand, like, where should we be committing? How can we commit? And I think for us, the biggest maybe challenge has been continuous engagement. So we ourselves have a committee that's dedicated to DE&I efforts. We have our former chair and our new chair on this call here. And I think my question to you is, how can we continue to engage our employees to want to participate in the committees and the offerings that we have to really continue the conversation?
Yeah, so there's a number of ways. What we're looking at introducing probably in Q4 and into next year is sort of an assessment tool, so that folks who have started a J.E.D.I journey can assess where they are. And that assessment tool will then lead you to some links that are on, and I don't know if you want to stop sharing or not, but
Sure. I can.
The assessment tool will lead you to some links. So our J.E.D.I Collaborative.com, we have tons of resources. We have tons of links. We're always gathering information from other folks who are thinking about what's happening and what can be done. So we have a resource library. We have a newsletter that we send out. So we're always linking to people who are asking sort of the same questions. I would say to your specific question, the first thing I would start with is a survey. I know surveys are, sometimes people don't like surveys. I love a good survey. But I think that there are ways to really implement a survey to figure out what your baseline is. Where are people at right now? Are people tired of hearing about J.E.D.I? Do we need to start calling it something else? Are people tired in general? If there's a priority, what are people more likely to engage with? So as a group, I don't know if you have an internal group or not, but if you have like a team that's focused on this, as a group, a 5-question survey that goes to everybody in multiple languages, that really tries to get at how tired people are right now, because people are exhausted because there's so much going on. That's the first thing. The second thing is to really make sure that you're incentivizing people's participation. So if folks are being asked to come, give them jobs. People say this all the time, but for instance, if there's a group of people who you would really like to be part of the conversation who are not engaged in the conversation, give them a job, put them in charge of the survey, ask them if they would be okay with working tech, but give them a job that it requires them to be there and also helps them get invested without really at the same time putting them on the spot to have to like come up with something like a slide deck or whatever. So that's another part of it, is really keep people engaged with as many of the system parts as you can. And then the third thing that I think is just kind of, again, a basic way of keeping a group of people engaged is ask them why they're not. Really just straight up be like, anyone who responds to that survey saying that they're tired for whatever reason, dig in. And people aren't out to be retribution, right? They're not trying to like punish you for your answers, but understand that anytime someone's in a tired position and they're asking someone, why don't you like your job, then you're going to get like a kind of a skewed answer. So again, go back to those folks who are kind of informal leaders and the folks who you think are more likely to be able to speak for the group, and try to dig into what specifically is not tracking about the efforts, because oftentimes it's the language that we're using, it's not the intent. And combined with that, oftentimes it's the fact that people have to change again. And we've been changing so much. We're all experiencing this change fatigue. And so if instead of presenting the next effort as yet another change, we're presenting it as a way to reinforce what we already want, what we're already doing, what we're already yearning for, that's another way to kind of get folks to lean in. So without having done kind of an assessment, it's hard to like be super specific, but just in terms of motivating groups, those things tend to at least open up enough of a dialogue for you to make a next step. Like, are we now going to have the next 3 meetings? Or are we going to have like 1 meeting?
No, that's really helpful. I appreciate that.
Structured.
Just want to open it up to the attendees here. If you guys have any questions, feel free. You can pop them in the chat, or feel free to just go off mute and ask yourself if you'd like.
I'll jump in. I have a question because I know in my experience, DE&I efforts are usually owned by like people function or the HR function. And a lot of times, like the next group that I think is most interested is usually operations, because from a supply chain perspective, it's really relevant to their business function. But with some other departments, you know, not to call anyone out, I was on finance previously, but maybe it's a little bit harder for us to convey how relevant it is to their department. And not sure if you or anyone on this call with departments like finance or sales, if you have found creative ways to kind of pitch the DE&I conversation in a way that maybe is particularly relevant to their business function, because I find it's a little bit harder sometimes to get buy-in from those departments.
I think there's a lot more data out there about what diversity can do in terms of just helping you make more money. From the tech world, and also from the fact that people have started working remotely, which means that we can get a lot more people from a lot of different areas. We are now able to actually see numbers around the increase in, especially in sales, in diversifying your marketing group. Different ideas, better ideas from all different places is translating into different placements. We've had sales teams move their products out of a sort of a standard soup aisle and into an ethnic food aisle. We've had people move their, which one was it? There was just recently, limes were sold next to Corona because someone on the sales team that's what people are doing anyway. Let's like actually try and do this. And they just saw their sales, both limes and Corona, like kind of go through the roof. I think it was Clorox who owns Corona. I think that was one of their initiatives. But diversifying ideas just means that you're going to have a wider pool of folks to throw stuff out there. And that just means that there are going to be more people out there connecting. There's more data on what different groups, the different groups represent, the spending power. Always a great bolster for the sales team to know that they can be very slightly pivoting something and not virtue signaling, but for instance, Pride's coming up, people are putting rainbows on everything. It's because there's a lot of money in the LGBTQI world. So thinking of those things is difficult if you don't have someone who's actually familiar with that community and what they might be interested in seeing on your team. So that's the sales pitch. And I think what I've heard from finance is less about what you do to change the internal culture and more about who you're bringing on board when you're hiring. And so that's more of a, how do we have a blind hiring process or less biased hiring process? How do we reach beyond the folks we know? We all know people who are in our industry, and what we've seen from finance teams, they tend to be made of the same set of folks because they know each other, they work together, et cetera. And so having just an overarching process that invites different kinds of folks in helps with that kind of mix. So
that makes sense. Thank you.
Addison, how do you see that, Cynthia? What role can nonprofits play in the larger J.E.D.I shift of CPG organizations?
So nonprofits, by virtue of being able to try something new, can actually pilot some of these things before for-profit companies get around to it. And so, for instance, Climate Collaborative is a nonprofit. Our packaging group is heavily underwritten. And what we can do is we can then go work with a particular company that also works with for-profit companies, but we can dig deep on like a particular kind of film that we want to see if it's compostable. We want to test the shelf life. We want to do all these things. And because we're so heavily supported, we can do that without worrying that it's going to fail. And so I think nonprofits really lead the charge in bringing energy and ideas and community and opportunities forward that might fail, because that's fine. We can do that, and we can then provide those case studies and provide those pilots and work to get those stories out there so that for-profit companies will see them and come across them, and one, maybe not make the same mistake, but more often feel more comfortable making that leap because someone else has already done it. So again, there's so many different kinds of nonprofits. There's the American Sustainable Business Council, which is made up of just hundreds of business-related nonprofit and community-based organizations, a sustainable, trying to build toward sustainable communities. So really, I think a nonprofit, I think the secret sauce of a nonprofit is that we have the ability to try things on purpose to shake things up, to take a firm stand about where we stand on equity, diversity first, centering BIPOC. We can just do that. And for-profit companies, for whatever reason, sometimes feel like they can't. And so seeing another group do it, seeing it be successful, seeing it kind of push that envelope and push that narrative is just helpful. So one, do the thing, and then two, talk about it as much as possible.
Yeah, to piggyback on something that Stephanie asked about, in terms of like how do you I don't remember the wording of the question, but like in terms of like across departments, how do you almost justify or talk to like folks that are more on the finance side about, how do you get some of these programs in place? I just was doing some Googling just to kind of look that up, and there's a report that McKinsey put out. It basically says like companies in the top quartile of like ethnic diversity, whether that be through the executive board or just like companies that are more culturally diverse, are 33% more likely to have industry-leading profitability. So if you can tie that back to, and it's awful that this it would have to come to this, right? But if you tie that back to, hey, listen, if you have a DEI program in place, you are generally more likely to be profitable. And if you look at the bottom quartile of that report, it says that companies on the bottom quartile of being like considered ethnically diverse, they're 29% less likely to achieve profitability. So I've had this conversation in a number of different ways with various vendors like that we work with at Sequoia that are, layer on to additional health benefit programs. One comes to mind. They're called Spora Health, and they help fill the gap in like you were talking about food deserts. Well, there's also medical deserts in those same areas where there's not great healthcare available. So what Spora does is they provide virtual healthcare, primary care physician access to the BIPOC community in those areas where those deserts exist, right? Or really anywhere. So it's a really, really like neat program, and it's a really cool company. If you guys, I'll send it out, a link to their website in the chat. But we were talking about this. How do you justify like, adding on a layer of like, whether it be per employee per month cost? And this came up about profitability, or not about profitability, but more like productivity and how that leads to profitability. So that's just a thought and an add on there. I just figured I'd jump in and share.
It's actually really amazing what happened when people all went back home, right? Because there were so many paradigms. People were like, we cannot work from home. We cannot do this. We cannot do that. We can't, add in an extra layer of employee support. We can't make sure that folks have the appropriate bandwidth to be able to work from home. And then suddenly everyone could. And what we're finding, and I'm not wishing for this, but what we're finding is that some of the leading indicators that have been piloted by companies where employees are staying right now, that everyone's putting, those programs are not, they're not these like huge cost programs, but they probably would not have been thought of before. So for instance, some people are going to 4-day work weeks, or you only need to be in the office 3 days. Zero impact on productivity, and huge impact on whether or not people stay in those companies, right? And so you're not like continually training new people. So there's all this information that is coming out that is now being tracked about what happens when you accommodate people, just a little bit. And it does not have to be a lot. And when we say people, we mean everybody. And so it doesn't have to be J.E.D.I. It just means everybody. And if you have ways to bring people into your company that are J.E.D.I, that are, leading to a more diverse opportunity and culture, then all you're saying is that once we have, we're not even saying we need to change a ton of what we're doing right now. What we are saying is that we want to make sure that these new folks who are coming in are adequately supported so they can find success. That's going to help the existing folks as well. They're not different kinds of humans. All of these things that we're trying to do are to support everybody, but we're also trying to do those in those doors and let different kinds of ideas, different kinds of people, different cultures, ages, all of them. We're just trying to mix up who's here, and then we're building a culture that supports everybody. And I will say one other thing. I've had a number of conversations with CEOs who are curious about how to bring people on board who have been with the company for a long time and who are just sort of resisting the idea. Again, going back to that, like people are tired of changing. Sometimes you just do it. Sometimes you just decide. You just decide we're now going to have maternity leave, and that's just part of being in the business. And if someone really cannot do that, then we are freeing up their future for them to go find someplace else. You can't convince everybody to do something. And honestly, most organizations don't. Most organizations, you come in knowing that there's a set of things. If you need to wear a uniform, they're not going to try and convince you of why it's great to wear a uniform. They're going to say, here's your uniform. So yes, have the bottom line, the numbers to support this, but also know that it's not weird to just put a policy in place.
I love that. I appreciate that. I have a question for you or to the group, whomever, but Steph and I were actually talking about this a little bit ago, of kind of changing the language of, when in people operations, when we're looking to bring people on into the organization, we talk about culture fit, right? But maybe it's this transition to culture add. And how do you have that dialogue of what does it mean culture fit versus culture add? And it doesn't mean that person has to be exactly like you to be very impactful to this culture. So just curious how you guys kind of bridge that conversation of like educating those hiring managers and getting them to see it through that way.
I can add something here. So we actually have that language in our job descriptions. So we are kind of flagging that from the get-go of anyone who's looking to come into our organization. And then it kind of lists our cultural attributes underneath kind of that header of what that means and what that can look like. And then I would also say from kind of a best practice hiring standpoint, if you have scorecards that you're using to really spell that out of what that means. I think for me, that's where the conversation starts, is because there's so much data and research on how when you're interviewing someone, even the language of how you take notes is playing into that narrative of culture fit. Oh, we, play tennis, we have this in common, right? The commonality of when you're trying to maybe bond with a candidate is where kind of that implicit bias comes into play. And so I think naming it in your role description and then having it as the standard around equitable and inclusive hiring practices is where I've found is the best place to start that conversation.
Any other questions anyone has for the group or for Cynthia specifically? All right. Well, Cynthia, thank you so much for your time, for your presentation, and for all the effort that you and One Step Closer and J.E.D.I are doing. This is an amazing tool, an amazing resource. We've done some of the trainings within J.E.D.I, so I highly recommend to the group. Some of the free resources are amazing. And for those who have the funds, the pathways we've kind of researched to see how we can incorporate them in our organization. It's just amazing what you guys are doing. So we appreciate all your efforts for us. And then thank you to everyone who joined the call. And hopefully we'll have another one of these scheduled soon.
And we'll send out
Thank you all so much.
one as well.
Oh yes, thank you, Rachel.
Cool. All right, thanks everyone. Have a great rest of your Tuesday.
Bye, guys.
Thanks.
See
Have a
ya.
good one.
Thank you.